Right guys, it's game week 29, back with another episode of Jamie Hink's Fantasy Football Picks here on the Jamie Hink's Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. So first off, we're going to have a quick look at how I got on last week on the game week 28. A small one there, it was only about 3 games I think from what I can remember. And then I'm going to dive straight into my lineup from this week. So first off, we'll go to last week's games. Big well done to anyone who picked Josh King, a hat-trick there for the Norwegian. Even managed to miss a penalty in there, which means he probably would have got even more points for your team if he hadn't have done that. But yeah, Josh King, 38.75 points last week. I didn't have him in my lineup, unfortunately. I think my lineup did reasonably well anyway. I have a little look in my book here where I write all my scores down. It was 98 points for my team last week. Gylfi Sigurdsson, 24 fantasy points, absolute fantasy gold. I recommend you pick him every single week. If you read my columns on DraftKingsFC.com, you'll see how much I have faith in that guy. Very expensive this week at 11,200, but still well worth picking just because of the performances he gives every single week. And he's obviously also the top assister in the whole of the Premier League. Also last week I had Lukaku, 23 points. He's pretty much on the same level as Sigurdsson, really, if I'm perfectly honest. But the disappointing ones for me last time out, Llorente, 0.5 points, not particularly good. And Baines, 2.5 points. Both of them got injured during the game. It's something you can't control, especially when it's impact injuries or muscular injuries, but they're not carrying before the games. But what you can do is if a player is carrying an injury from maybe the previous week, it's well worth considering whether you actually want to put them in your team, because if they go off after half an hour or 20 minutes, you're just simply not going to get the return on points that you would do from another player. Also last week, Champions League, of course, very exciting midweek. And I think what the Champions League said to me was just continue picking wide players. They had Benjamin Mendy there, 18.25 points. The way that he got forward for Monaco was basically like watching a secondary left winger, really, for most of the game. Got his assist in the end, but like his attacking play, absolutely excellent. And it just underlines really picking wide players is a really good policy to take when you're playing any fantasy game, especially daily fantasy football on DraftKings, just because of the award you get for crosses, assists, tackles and all that as well. Also, Paulo Dybala scored a goal. A little bit disappointed with Griezmann, 5.5 points. Wasn't particularly good from him, but Koke, another one, 11.5 points, gets the crosses, gets the tackles, gets the shots, just gets it all really. And Buffon finishing it off nicely with 14 points, which meant I had 97.85 points. So after that, let's get straight into my lineup for this week's games. So starting off, 8-man lineup, $50,000 to spend as per usual. In goal, gone for someone who it's been very, very good this season when he's been fit. Jordan Pickford of Sunderland, 7.8 fantasy points per game, $4,900 on DraftKings. Gives me a little bit of a saving there for later on in my team. But yeah, Sunderland have been very, very poor this season, but Pickford's been, for me, their best player, apart from Jermaine Defoe, of course. But Defoe's on a bit of a barren run in front of goal right now, so we'll go for Pickford. Leads the Premier League in saves, 4.7 saves per game. That's worth almost 10 points on DraftKings every week alone, so it doesn't even matter if Sunderland concede a couple of goals because he's still going to get you points. I think if you get 8 or 10 points off him, you're really, really happy. Doesn't get a lot of clean sheets, only had 2 in his 17 appearances this season. But I mean, if they're going to get one, it's going to be this week. Burnley absolutely horrific away from home this season, haven't won a game. If there's going to be a week where Sunderland are going to pick up points and start another one of those ridiculous great escapes, it's going to be this week. If they lose this week, sorry David Moyes, your team is relegated. But I'm happy to pick Pickford every week anyway, so thanks for picking him, Dave. Right, into the defence, Brian Oviedo, Sunderland as well, $4,000. I don't regularly stack any Sunderland players, but this week I think it's an exception just because I think Oviedo has played every game since he's arrived, and he's one of those players that's a bit of an attacking beast from the back, really. I really like that from him. His numbers are very, very good as well across the board, which is good for you fantasy guys. It's 5.3 tackles per game, which is absolutely excellent performance across any fantasy format. 2.3 interceptions per game, 1.3 fouls drawn per game, and 3 crosses per game. You know you're going to get fantasy points from Oviedo every single week. And we knew that from back when he played at Everton, and he used to do it quite a lot when he was coming in place of Leighton Baines. But the bonus here is that Burnley have actually given up more crosses to defenders than any other team in the whole of the Premier League. They've given up 202 crosses across the whole season. That's a bit of a conundrum, isn't it? More than any other team. I see Sunderland scoring a couple of goals here, and I think Oviedo you could even look at for an assist. Yeah, basically get him in at $4,000. I think he's a great pick. So alongside him, I've gone for Eric Peters of Stoke, who's got 7.7 fantasy points per game at $3,900. It's pretty, I think he's almost hitting value there every single week, but he's actually the second highest tackling defender in the whole of the Premier League. He has 3.1 tackles per game. Only Fabio of Middlesbrough is better in that department, and I think he's going to have a really busy afternoon against Chelsea. The way that they use the flanks with people like Moses, Willian, Pedro, Hazard, they all kind of buzz around that right wing area. Even Costa gets out there every so often. And I think if you pick Peters, he's going to get good numbers in the tackle department. He's going to get good numbers in the interception department as well. And I think you're going to get a good return on your fantasy points this week. If you look at how he got on against Spurs and City, who are both in and around the top of the league with Chelsea, he actually had 3 tackles in both those games. I think he gets more this week personally. I think he'll score you plenty of points. He's not getting a clean sheet, unfortunately, because I don't think Stoke are going to win, but I think you can get those tackle numbers quite easily. So up into the midfield, one of my fantasy favourites of late has been Ross Barkley. I've picked him again this week at $8,500. 10.5 fantasy points per game. Everton are back on home soil, and I couldn't take Gylfi Sigurdsson this week. I think he's too expensive in an away game at Bournemouth, where I don't think his return is going to be. I don't think it's going to be higher than Barkley's. And if you see the other guy I've got in a minute, I think those two together is a better option than Sigurdsson. Barkley double-digit fantasy points in his last 3 games. He's getting back on one of those runs that he had recently, and he's had an assist in both of the last 2, which means he has 7 assists for the whole season, which I'm pretty sure is his best total he's ever had. And it is pushing that top bracket of assisters in the Premier League. All he needs to do is assist another couple of Lukaku goals, which I would not be surprised if that happens again this weekend. And he's right up there alongside your Erikssens, your De Bruynes and your Sigurdssons. Also, he's one of Everton's corner takers, so yeah, factor that in as well. Their home record is absolutely excellent recently, and Hull absolutely awful away from home. Put it all together, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't seriously consider picking Ross Barkley this week. Andros Townsend loves to cross it. Double-digit fantasy points in 6 straight games for Palace. Hasn't started all of those games. There's been a couple of sub-appearances thrown in there. But yeah, 9 crosses per game is his average over the last 6 matches. He's 6th in crosses for the entire Premier League with 159. Scored and you've got to factor in there as well that he hasn't actually played every single game for Palace. He had a period where he wasn't playing hardly at all, really bad form, but now he's back on form. Scored an absolutely excellent goal last time out as well, so I have that little boost to his confidence as well. And he doesn't have England to worry about, so pick Andros Townsend, take those points in a home game against Watford. That I expect them to do well in. I'm not going to say they're going to win, but I expect them to do well. So straight into the forwards, and you're probably not surprised by this one. I've gone for Romelu Lukaku, 9,600, 14.7 fantasy points per game. It was a toss-up basically between him and Costa. Didn't quite have enough to take Diego Costa with the other players I had, so I went for Romelu Lukaku. But I think it's an absolute no-brainer picking Lukaku this week, just because of Everton's home form, absolutely excellent right now. I told you earlier in the Barkley piece it was. He's level on top of the scoring charts with 19 goals. Lukaku scored at home last week against West Brom, and that was the 5th successive game he scored a goal at home for Everton. He has reportedly been agitating for a move this week, but it still doesn't put me off Lukaku. I still think he's very, very strong pick this week. He also averages 2.7 shots per game. I think he's getting 1 or 2 goals this week, and you'll be happy you picked him when he gets over 20 points for your fantasy team. So second forward is Joshua King, hat-trick hero from last week, $6,200. Bournemouth's main man right now, 9.5 fantasy points per game this season. I think that win has almost certainly dragged them out of the relegation picture. They win again this week, which I expect them to do so against Swansea at home. They're out of it completely. They're on to 33 points, and I think that'll be enough if you throw in a couple more draws later on in the season. But King, 38.75 points last week. That's an absolutely excellent total, considering he missed a penalty as well. It would have been even higher. Now he's 11 goals for the season. I think that's a really good return for someone who maybe doesn't look like one of the top tier strikers in the league, but he's chipped in with a lot. And I think it says a lot for Bournemouth's transfer policy. They signed a lot of really expensive strikers who are quite frankly rubbish, people like Grab and Afobe, but King is the one who's really shined through. And I think you pick him at 6,200 this week, he's going to be better than the other options that are at that price. So the final guy on my team this week, I've been duped by the romance of Leicester City, and I've gone for Mark Albrighton at $5,600. 8.6 fantasy points per game. I was surprised that he's managed to keep up those numbers for the season as a whole, but he's another one of those players who's really benefiting from the departure of Claudio Ranieri a couple of weeks ago. Double-digit fantasy points in 3 successive matches for the Englishman. He'll probably be kicking himself if he didn't get in the England squad. I don't think he's quite there yet personally. But yeah, he scored that decisive second goal against Seville as well, so that's an even bigger boost to his confidence. Even after such what has been a poor campaign, if you compare it to last year for Brighton, he's actually still in the top 10 for crossing, and he's actually 8th with 144 for the entire season. I think that's a great way to finish off your lineup. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video once again. I try to get one up every single week. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up below. If you want to see more of this content, please subscribe to my channel, and there's instructions on how to do that below. And most of all, good luck in your contests this week. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.